Hello everyone, today we're learning mציעא Daf Hayomi. We're going to start 3 lines down. V'omar Rava, said Rava, Hayman do oiguri ledavla. He rented workers to water his field. V'asa mitra, came the rain before they started their job, and now there's nothing to water because the rain did the job. Say that the poyalim, it's a loss of the poyalim, because they know that it might happen and they take that into chance. Also, Nara, the river overflowed and watered the field. Say to the balabais, it's a loss of balabais, and Rashi explains because the river overflowing and watering the field is not a common thing by all fields, not like rain, and therefore the poyalim don't know what the common thing in that specific field, that they get watered by the river or not. And therefore, it's a balabais, he knew about it, so he has to pay the workers. The Yovlu, and he pays them kipol bottle, like we said earlier on, doesn't give them the full price, because at the end of the day they're not working. So let's say they'd be willing to water the field for £100 a day, and to sit at home and do nothing, they're willing for 50, so he pays them only 50. Rava said another din, someone who rented workers to water his field. Half day through the work, the river stopped and there's no water to water the field with. Iloi ovid the posik, if it's something uncommon, say to the poyalim, the loss of the poyalim. Ovid the posik, it's common that the river stops, depends. Ibn Masa, if they're from the town and they know about it, obviously, because they live there, say to the poyalim. Labnei Masa, if they're not from the town, so they don't know about the river, how it flows, when does it stop, say to the balabais, because he knew about it, and they don't know about it, like before when the river overflowed. Bomarova, someone rented workers to do a job. And the job got finished half the day, and he rented them for a full day. If he has to give them work that's less hard, we can give them inami also the kavasa work that's the same difficulty. We could give them to do it to finish the day, to do the other job. The kosher, if he only has work that's harder than the work that he rented them to do, we can't force them to do it. And he has to give them the full wages like he agreed with, even though that they worked half a day. Ask the Gemara, you should give them like a poil bottle because half the day they're not working. So the Gemara, when was Rava talking about Bachlushe de Mechuza, the porters that come from Mechuza, if they don't work, they get weaker, so they prefer to do work and not get weak than to sit at home and do nothing, and therefore you have to pay them a full agreement that you agreed with them. Amar, we learned early on. So before early on, we learned of a case. The Brisa was talking about the case of a kaplan. I mean, someone who gets paid for the job. They agreed with him to do a job for 2 sela. Each sela is 4 zuz. That means for 8 zuz. And half the way through, he decided to stop. So Amar, we learned in the Brisa, Shomim lo masha osu. We estimate what they did already, half the job. Ketzad, what's the case? So let's say what he rented them for 2 sela, and that's 8 zuz. And now after half the job, what they've done already is worth 6 dinar, 6 zuz. And the reason, and it went up in value, that means the price went up in value of workers. So now to finish a job also will cost them 6. Noisen and sela. You still give them a full sela like you agreed for half the job, a full job, 2 sloim. So one job, half the job, 1 sela. And you don't say, oh, but it will cost me to finish the job another 6, so therefore I should only pay them 2. Tanakama holds no. You give them the full sela. Rabbanon held, Yad poil al elyono, that even though that the poil backed out, he gets what you agreed on. You agreed on a full day too, so if half a day is half. And the reason is that it says in the Torah, Ki avodaihem, that the Jewish people are my slaves, and not lo avodim la'avodim, they're not slaves of other people, and therefore if you can't stop in half day, he's like a type of a slave, and therefore he has the ability to stop and get what was agreed on half the price that he did. Said the Brisa weiter, or they finish their job and get 2 sloim. Something more pshita, obviously that's what he agreed on, to give 2 sloim for the full job, and now they finished the job. What's a chiddush? Something more loitzricha. Tell you what the case is, it's a chiddush. The aikar avidita. The price of workers went up. The imru poyalim, and halfway through the work, the poyalim backed out. Imru means they backed out, and they said, we don't want to finish the work. We could go get the other half of the job. We could get the higher price. Also, Balabais Paisinu went to Balabais and made him happy. He was marbe betachnunim. Please come back. Please stay and finish the whole job. Mao the tema motze armule. The worker could tell the Balabais. The contractor could tell the Balabais. Kime Faisinan Adato the Tafklon Agro. That's why we're willing to finish the job is because we understood that you're going to pay us extra because the price went up, and because we said they're on hold. They had poil al elyoino. Kamash malon. That's a chiddush. The omalehu. That the balabais tell the contractor that I said I'm going to give you more is because I'm going to give you better food and better drink, but they mean that I'm going to give you. I never meant to say that I'm going to give you more wages. I just begged you to stay, and I'll give you more food and drink, but no more wages, and therefore he only has to pay him 2 sloim. Selah, what happened if the price didn't go change? The price of the work didn't go up or down. They agreed on 2 selah. Now halfway through they want to back out, and the price is still a selah of what they've done. So he gives them a selah. Selling more pshita, obviously, what should you give them? Selling more leitricha de zala viditameikora. At the beginning, to do such a job, it cost less than 2 selah. It was cheaper. But this balabais paid the workers, agreed with them on a price that's higher than the market value. 2 sloim. On the soif aikar vidita, and now halfway through, the price of workers went up, and now really everyone would take 2 selah for such a job. The combat feizuze mao de tema amrle. You might have thought they could tell the balabais, tfeizuze amarklon. You gave us a certain percentage above the market price when we started the work. Tfeizuze avlon. Now that the work's worth more, give us a little bit more than the market price, and we should get more than a selah because yad poel al elyoino. Kamash malon the omar lehu ki amru lechu tfeizuze. When were they willing to give you higher than the market price for the work? That you're not willing to do the job. You needed 2 selah. You were not willing to do a job for less than 2 selah. So I was willing to give you more. This is the price I was willing. But once you accepted 2 selah, I'm not willing to give you anything more, and that's a job that you're willing to do. Why should I pay you more? And therefore I'm not paying you more, and therefore I only have to pay 1 selah. And that's the chiddush of this case of the brisa. Continue the brisa and says, Rav Doisa, who argues on Tanakama, says, we don't look on how much the value of what they've done already, we look what's left in the job. If to finish the job it costs us 6 dinar and we agreed on 2 sloim, that's 8 dinar. All I have to pay is a shekel is 2 dinar, and the other 6 I'll give the next workers who will finish, the next contractor who will finish the job. Says the Gemara, Rav Doisa holds, he argues on Chachamim, and he holds that the contractor is Yod el HaTachtoina and Kol HaMishane, because he changed and backed out in the middle of the day, he loses and he only gets paid 2. Rav Doisa says, they could finish the job and get 2 sloim. Like Tanakama, says the Gemara Pshita, it's obvious how much should they get paid. Says the Gemara, we need it in a case. The price of the work went down. And the balabais backed out. In this case, the balabais backed out because the price of workers went down. So halfway through, he says to himself, I don't want to work with this contractor. I'll get another contractor for the second part of the job, and I'll pay him less. But other Poyalim Paisinu went to Poyalim and said, please keep us. Let's finish this job. And they were marba betachnunim to stay on the job. Ma'odetema, you might have thought Motzi Omalu, the balabais could tell the contractor, Adata the Batsrisu Limagroi, I thought would finish a job that for the second half you'll take less wages. Komash Malon, the Amrulei, no, that we might fire you is Adata the Aviditoloch Avidit Shapiro. We said we'll do you a better job we'll do you a better job, but we're never willing to get less paid for this job, and therefore he has to pay the full 2 sloim. If what's to finish off the work, is worth a seller, and he agreed on 2 slime, and they did half the work, so he gives them a seller. Says the Gemara, Pshita, obviously. Says the Gemara, Amar Avuna Breda of Noson, Lo Tzricha, we need this case. For what case? The Zilu Inu Gabei, Zuzamekar. At the beginning, they took a lower value than what's the market rate to do such a job. They took a less zuz than the market value. They were willing to do this contract for a cheaper price. And then the price in the market went down. You might have thought, but we agreed that I'll give you a zuz less than the market value. But now that the market value went down even more, I'll give you less zuz than the market value now. That's a lower amount. Kamash Malone, the Amrele, they'll tell him, when we're willing to do it for zuz less, because that's the amount you could have paid. To sell, and we knew you can't pay more, so we agreed to do it. Now you agreed on 2 seller, and you have the 2 seller to pay. We're not willing to do it for less than that, and therefore you still have to pay us, the seller, for half the job. Okay, so we have here Machloikes Chachomim and Rav Doisa. Chachomim hold in the Brayso of the Yad Poel al Elyono, like we said, Ke'avod Hayem v'lo Yavod el Avodim, and Rav Doisa says no. Yad Balabayit Kol HaMeshana is Yad al Tachtoina. So Omar Rav, Halacha Rav Doisa. Rav said halacha is like Rav Doisa. Asked the Gemara, me Omar Rav, Ochi, did Rav say so? Omar Rav said in a different place, Poel Yochel Achzor, boy, a worker could stop in the middle of the day. Even in the middle of the day, he could stop and say, I'm not working anymore, and get paid for the half of the job he's done. Now, there's 2 types of workers. There's one worker who gets paid per day, per week, per hour. That's more like a slave, because in that hour, he's totally under your responsibility of the boss. And there's another worker who's a contractor who gets paid for the job. I'll plow your field and you'll pay me so and so, or I'll sew this cloak and you'll pay me this amount. Doesn't matter how long it will take me. So says the Gemara, suggestion. When did Rav Doisa speak in the Brayso? It's talking about by a kablan, by a contractor. And then we say that if he was choizepo, he loses. Why? Because the contractor is not like an eved, because he's his own boss. He does it in his own time. So if you change your mind, you don't have the ability, because it says Ke'avod Hayem v'lo Yavod el Avodim, and that's why Yod al Tachtoina. Masha'inkin Osochi, who gets paid, let's say, by day, and he stops him in the day, he has the ability to do that because he's not your slave, and you're making him type of your slave. And therefore, when the Rav say Poel Yochel Achzor boy, that's a Poel, and when the Rav Doisa say that the Poel Yad Balabayis al Elyono, that's so by a kablan. Says the Gemara, is there any difference to Rav Doisa between a kablan and a socher? Tanya, we learned in the Brayso, a socher is a Poel. Someone rented a worker. And half day through the work, he heard that a relative of him passed away. He got burned from the sun and he can't do the work. He got sick. If he's paid by day, by hour, he has to pay him the full amount of half the day that he's done, as it was agreed. In Kablan, if he's a contractor who gets paid for the job, he's done half the job, you give him half the job, because he's an onus, they can't continue. Someone died, he got sick. And in this Brayso, it says clearly that also Socher and also Kablan have the same din. Says the Gemara, money, who is this Brayso? If it's Rabbanon who hold Yad Poel al Elyono, Ma'ira Shomo Shemeis, why does the Brayso only talk about the case where he's honest, that he got sick, or someone passed away? Even if he's not in a case of honest and he changed his mind and he doesn't want to finish work, Nami, the din is the same, that he gets fully paid. Why? They hold Yad Poel al Elyono. So therefore, it doesn't make sense that the Brayso is Rabbanon, because the Brayso says specifically if honest happened, if you're Rabbanon, even if honest never happened. Rav Doisi, it must be this Brayso of Rav Doisa. What do we see in the Brayso? Because this Brayso is talking about also Socher and also Kablan, and Rav Doisa normally holds Yad Balabayis al Elyono if the Poel is choizer boy, but the Brayso, because it was honest, he doesn't lose. But we could see that Rav Doisa also spoke also about Schirus and also about Kablanos. So therefore, Rav, who says halachas like Rav Doisa, and Rav Doisa spoke about both cases. How did that fit in with the other din of Rab, the poel yochel achzer boy? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchok, B'dova avud v'divrei hakoil. No right from this price that Rav Doisa holds also by kablonus, also by schirus yad poel ala tachtoina. Why? Because this price is talking about B'dova avud that has a special din. Dova avud means that if we don't finish the work today, I lose out. I need the work done today. I have a wedding. If I won't get the food delivered, I won't have food. I don't need this food tomorrow. That's called Dova avud. So in that case, Bein Rav Doisa, Bein Rav Bonon hold that poel can't be choizer, and if a poel's choizer, I could trick him and pay more, and I could pay other workers a lot of money, and the first worker is going to need to pay. So, and therefore, this Brisa is talking about such a case, and the Brisa tells you that even in such a case with Dova avud, if the worker had the oinus, achzosei chama, or shama shemeis lemeis, so he could back out and he doesn't lose anything, because it's oinus that happened to him, and therefore this Brisa is Bein Rabbanon, Bein Rav Doisa, and Tuma b'Dova avud, and there's no raya that Rav Doisa holds that yad poel ala tachtoina, even by schirus, maybe holds only by kablonos. So the Gemara will bring you another raya that Rav Doisa holds that even by kablonos, even by schirus, yad poel ala tachtoina. And we learned in our Mishnah, kol ha-mishana, at the end of the Mishnah, kol ha-mishana yod ala tachtoina, anyone who changes his hand, he has a better part of the deal. The kol ha-choyze boy, anyone who changes from a deal, it's similar to mishane, who goes back on what he agreed on, yod ala tachtoina, he gets a lower part of the deal. So bishleim kol ha-mishana yod ala tachtoina, why is he coming to tell you the Sosan Lontana? The Mishnah wants to tell you a Stam Mishnah Karab Yudah. The Rab Yudah it's a Mishnah in Nagoiza Leitzim in Bobi Kama, and then later on in our Gemara, that a case where he gave the person who paints a wall to paint black, and he did it red, or he gave him to paint red, and he did it black. So Rab Yudah says that Kol HaMeshana Yod Ala Tachtoina, because he changed, so he loses, he gets a better part, less good part of the deal, the worst part of the deal. And therefore, that what the Mishnah is coming to tell you, Kol HaMeshana Yod Ala Tachtoina. To tell you like that we paskin like Rav Yehuda. Elo Kol HaChoyze Bo Yod Ala Tachtoina. Anyone who's choyze, his hands on the bottom, he gets less better part of the deal. Why is that coming to include? Why is that coming to tell you extra? Lav isn't it coming to tell you La'asuye Poyel Rav Doisa. It's coming to tell you because at the beginning of the Mishnah it says that Kablin who was choyze Yod Ala Tachtoina. So the end of the Mishnah is coming to tell you that Kol HaChoyze Bo Yod Ala Tachtoina, that also a poyel, not a contractor, also someone who gets paid by day, he also Yod Ala Tachtoina, like Rav Doisa. So we can see that Rav Doisa spoke also about poyel. So we have a kasha. How did Rav say halacha like Rav Doisa? And Rav says poyel yochel achzer boy. So the Gemara, Elo Rav Doisa tarti komar. Enochinami Rav Doisa spoke. They had poyel tachtoina when he backs out in the middle of the day, also by a contractor, but for sure also the chiddush is also by a sochir. Rav Doisa spoke. Olechor Rav said halacha like Rav Doisa, and he says poel yachol achzer boy. So the Gemara, Rav Sovalei kavosei b'chodo, he holds like Rav Doisa by one case by a kablin, that because he's not eved, they yodel atachtoino. That's what he meant to say halacha like Rav Doisa. So poligolei b'chodo, but by poel he doesn't agree, because poel is avodayim v'lo avodei le'avodim, and therefore he holds that poel who was choyzer, or sochi who was choyzer, lav yodel atachtoino. And therefore we answered the kasha. So the Gemara, Ibo Yisema, tell you another teretz. Kol HaChoyze Bo Yod Ala Tachtoina lekedetanya. Really, Rav Doisa only spoke about kablonos, and by schirus, everyone agrees ayad poel al elyono because avodayim v'lo avodei le'avodim, and therefore Rav fits in very good. He says halacha like Rav Doisa, because Rav Doisa spoke only about kablonos, and he says poel yochel achzer boy, that's a socher. So why is our Mishnah by us telling us Kol HaChoyze Bo Yod Ala Tachtoina, why is it coming to include? Isn't it coming to include the dinner of Doisa by socher? No, it's coming to tell you a different din, like the Tanya, like we learned in the Brisa. Kol HaChoyze Bo Keitzad, what's the case? Aryeh shemocha soda lechaver be'elef zuz. Reuven sold his field to Shimon for 1,000 zuz. But no san loy mois mehem. Some people are not going to mois. But no san loy mehen mosayim zuz. And Shimon gave Reuven 200 zuz purchase price, and the purchase price was 1,000. Now, before he gave the other 100, the seller says, I want to back out from this deal. The buyer has the upper hand. Rotzo, he could say, if he wants, he could tell the seller, I want my 200 zuz back. Or you could tell the seller, tell me karka keneged moisai, I paid you 200, that's already paid for. I want to get a piece of land worth 200. Meichen magbeu, from what land does the moicha have to give the buyer? Minaidis, from the best of his land. If the buyer is the one who says, I don't want to complete this deal, I gave you 200, I don't want to complete the deal, the extra 800, the hand of the seller is on top. Rotzo, if he wants, he could say, take back, you don't want to complete the sale, take back your 200 dollars, and I don't want to have anything to do with you. Rotzo, if he wants, he could say, take land, you pay 200, I owe you 200, I'll give you 200 in land. From what part of the land does he give him? In Itzburus, from the worst part of his land. Rab Shimon Gamliel says, we teach them that this shouldn't happen, that they shouldn't have the ability to be choizer. Ketzad, what do you do? When you pass over the 200 zuz for this field that's worth 1,000, Kosav, ani ploinim ben ploinim, Mocharti, the Moich writes, Mi Reuven ben Yaakov, sold the ploinis, this field that is in this place, the ploini to Shimon, Be'elef zuz, for 1,000 zuz, v'nosani mem mosayim zuz, and he paid me already 200 zuz, v'areini noishe boy, ches moi zuz, and the rest, 800 zuz, he owes me as a loan. And therefore, Connor, the whole field becomes Shimon, umachzelo is Hashar, and then Shimon owes him 800. Even a few years later, and therefore the mechira is chal fully, and on the rest of the money he owes him, it's just a loan, and therefore no one could be choizer boy. So therefore, but this whole brisa, the context in our sugya, that when it tells the Mishnah kol choizer boy yoda latachtoina, it's coming to tell you this case that depends if the moich is choizer yoda latachtoina, if the lekeach is choizer yoda latachtoina, and it's not coming to tell you that Rav Doisa also spoke about sochir. Rav Doisa never spoke about sochir, only by Kaplan, but by sochir he'll agree to Rav that the din is yad poel al elyoina because avodayim velo avodah leavodim. Amar, we learned in this brisa we just brought. Meichan magbeu, where does he, in the case where the moicha changes mind, where does he pay him from? What type of field? Minaidis, from his best field. Kusal kedaita, or the Gemara of the Bnei Shiva fought. Meidis the mechosra that he gives him. When we said Meidis, doesn't mean the best part of that field that they agreed on. It means from the best of any of his field they have. Ask the Gemara, why is this? Loikeach have a schos more than someone who's a malva, who someone owes him money. But and we learned Baal Choiv, a Baal Choiv who someone owes him money, and he's coming to take a field. What field does a loiva have to give him? Dino bebeinin is a mediocre type of field. Boy, then more so, he gave money on this land. Why does he have to give him the best land of all his lands? Mechtese, he bought this land. It means when we said in the brisa that he gives him from the best, or when he gives him from the worst, in the case where the loikeach was choyezer, we're talking about from that field. The field's a big field, he has to give him the best part of that field that's worth 200. And in the Sefer, when it says that he gives him the worst part, he gives him the worst part from that field, not from all the fields, because that's a field he bought. Really, you can tell me that he means from the best of all his fields that he has, not from this specific field. And why does he have to give the best field? It says, Ravacha, Stam Mandi Zovin Arab Al Fazuzi, when a person's buying a field for so much money, Elef Zuz was a big amount of money, how does he have 1,000 zuz to pay? Back in those days, there was no way. You don't get a loan from the bank for a big amount. You'd have to sell his own properties. To get such a big amount, he had to obviously sell them quick in a lower price than the market value. And he did it because he wanted to buy this land. And now this guy is changing his mind. So he made me lose. I had to sell my property for cheap. So the Luikech is like a nizak because he sold his property for cheap to get the money quick, and now the guy doesn't want to sell it to him. Etnan, we learned, and Izokim, someone who gets Nizak, Shomin Loi Be'idis, they get paid from the best land. And therefore, in this case, they should get paid from the best land that the Moicha has. That's where he has to pay the 200 zuz that he owes him of land. Rav Shimon Gamliel Oima, we learned in the Brisa, Rav Shimon Gamliel says, Melamdim Oiso, we teach them Shlo Yachzoru, that they can't cancel this deal. Ketzad, how do you do it? Koisiv Lani Ploini Ben Ploini, you write clearly that really the Mechira is Chal fully and the rest is a loan. Tzedek Morakam and the Kosav Lo Yehochi, the whole reason is because he wrote it clearly that it's that the whole land becomes the Loikeach and the rest is a loan. Holoi Kosav Hochi, if he didn't write it specifically, Loikoni, he's only coined 200 or he's not coined anything. But Tanya, we learned in the Brisa that Rav Shimon Gamliel says otherwise. Because it says, he's someone who gave a deposit to his friend to buy a land. And he told him, the buyer told the seller, if I change my mind and I don't give you the rest of the money, the deposit, the land's worth 1,000, I gave you 200, 200 is yours. And the seller says, if I change my mind and I don't sell you this land, I'll give you double, I'll give you 400, I'll give you the 200 that you gave already, and plus another 200. Rabbi Yossi hold it's a good nai and it works, and if the one who's choizer loses 200. Rabbi Yossi letame, this goes the fear shittas Rabbi Yossi dama asmachta kani, that something's like if, like a bet, like if it's koina, because really this guy when he was selling, if you'd know that he'd change his mind, he'd never be willing to give a 200 extra to the buyer, and the buyer wouldn't be willing to give the seller 200 if he'd know that he'd change his mind. So it's a if. And in an if, normally we hold asmachta loy kanya, but Rabbi Yossi hold asmachta kanya, and therefore these noim work. Rabbi Yehuda who argues on Rabbi Yossi says, no, he's koina in the field, the value of how much he gave the Yerovan. He gave a deposit of 200, so he's koina in the field 200 value. Omar Rabbi Shimon Gamliel will come to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and says, when is this talking about that you only koina keneged the Yerovan? This man Omar lo Yervoni Yoku, that he told the buyer, told the seller, with this deposit I'm giving you 200, I want to be koina the whole field. And now to be koina the whole field that's worth 1,000 to 200, it doesn't work because he needs to get 1,000. So in such a case, you only koina 200 because you can't koina. He's selling it for 1,000. How are you koina with 200? If he sold him a field for 1,000 zuz, and he gave him 500 zuz, half the buying price, he gave him already, and he never said that with this 500 I want to be koina the whole field. He's koina the whole field, and the rest is just a loan. 500 is just a loan, and he can pay it even a few years later. But the mechira is chal with this 500, because that's when you buy a field and you give part of the money, so you have already kinyan kesef, the whole field is nikna, and the rest you have to give as a loan. And it's a very interesting thing that when you want to buy the whole field and you're trying to buy the whole field with 500, that's a field that's worth 1,000, it's not chal. But when you just give it as a type of a down payment to start paying for the field, then you are coining the whole field. But clearly we can see over here, the Rav Shimon Gamliel says, in a normal case, if you didn't say Revoni Yakun and you give part of the money, you're koina the whole field. And earlier on, Rav Shimon Gamliel says you have to write it specifically, and if you don't write that specifically, you're in the koina keneged moisecha lechor it's a stira. Says the Gemara lo ikashya, hod ko'ayil v'nofik azuzi, hod lo ko'ayil v'nofik azuzi. A big difference. One case is where here the seller got only part of the money. So the difference is, in one case, the seller is chasing after the buyer and saying, give me the rest of the money, give it to me, you owe it to me. He's desperate for it. And in the other case, he's not desperate for it. He's not chasing after the money he owes. And what's the difference in that? The difference is that when he's desperate for the money, he shows that he wouldn't be willing to sell his field if he doesn't get all his money. And therefore, in such a case, if the guy doesn't pay him, I wouldn't want to sell my field. I need the money now. If he's not paying me, I'm canceling that part of the sale. And therefore, you only koina connected the money that he paid and not the rest. And only if you write clearly a star that you koine everything, then you koine everything. And when did Reb Shimon Gamliel say that naturally you koine everything when you pay part? That's when the buyer, the seller is not chasing after the buyer. So we can see he's not desperate for the money and he's happy to sell this land. And therefore, the whole land is nikna straight away. And the rest is a loan. The Omar Rava, like what Rava said, a high man is someone who sold something to his friend, and his friend paid him partly, and he's desperate for the money, he's chasing it for him. So his friend's not going to, because he shows he's only willing to sell it for the money now, and you're not giving me the money, I want my item back. If he's not desperate to get his money, he's koine, and the rest is a choiv. So we can see that there is this difference between if the seller is chasing after the kasha he's owed. Says Rava, someone who lent out to his friend 100 zuz, and his friend pays him back, but every time 1 zuz, little by little. He paid, and he comes to 100 times he paid him zuz, he paid back his choiv. Says more obviously it's considered paying back. The malva has taroimus, he could be upset with the loiva. The Amalei, he could tell him, you made me lose. Because if someone pays you back £10,000, you'll take the £10,000 and think, what am I doing with this £10,000? Maybe I'm going to buy some Bitcoin, maybe I'm going to put it in the stock market, buy something in real estate. I don't know, I'll keep it for a special event. But if you get paid every time £10 back, £10, you go and you buy a sandwich. And then at the end of the day, you have no 10,000 left. It's all wasted. So Piron, he paid me back, but he paid me back in ways I lost all this money now, so I'm upset with you. This person sold his friend a donkey. And his friend paid him the full amount, missing 1 zuz. And the seller was desperate for the money, and he was going to the buyer and saying, pay me my zuz, pay me my zuz. Yosef Ravashi was sitting, he was mine in this shaila. In such a case, we said that when the seller is desperate for his money, the buyer is not koina. But here he's only desperate for a small amount, 1 zuz. Koni or loy koni? Do we say it's like a case where he's desperate for his money and there's no kinyan? Or do we say in this case it's only 1 zuz? We don't cancel the kinyan because of that. Mordechai told Ravashi, this is what Avimi Magrunia said in the name of Rava. Zuzah, Kizuzidomi. 1 zuz is like many zuz. And Veloy Koni, if he was desperate for that zuz, for that last zuz for the donkey, therefore he's not koine of that zuz, because he was desperate for it, and there's no difference how much he's desperate for zuz or for 1,000 zuz. How could you say this? For Amrinan Mishmei Rava, we know in the name of Rava Koni that such a case where it's only Ka'ayev and Nofik Azuz, only on 1 zuz, he's koine. And you're telling me that he's not koine even if it's only 1 zuz. It's a steer and Rava, what's going on? Omalei, he told him, Tetargem Shmaitech b'moichel Sodeu b'pnei Rasa. You're going to have to explain that when Rava said Koni, it's talking about where he was desperate for the money. When he sold a field, that's a bad field. He wasn't desperate for the money. He sold the field because it was a bad field and he didn't want his field. And he's desperate now for 1 zuz. And in such a case, Rava says, oh, he's desperate only for 1 zuz. You're koina. Why that really 1 zuz if he's desperate for, you're not koina? But in this case, because the field's bad, the reason why he's desperate for the money is not because he needs the money and if not, he doesn't want the kinyan. It's because he wants him to pay already because it's a bad field. He doesn't want him to regret that he bought the field. So he's trying to make sure that he gets the full paid. And in that case, the kinyan is not bottled because the person doesn't want the kinyan to be bottled. He's selling the field because it's a bad field. In a normal case, if he's desperate for the money, all he needs is the money. So if he's not paying, so the kinyan's not chal in that part. But in the case where it's a bad field, he wants the kinyan to be chal. And therefore, the kinyan's not bottled. Shkoyach.